My wife Sydney, 28 female, and I, 35 male, had a friend Connor who we always hung out with. After my wife and I got married, we saw Connor less because our lives went in different directions. Connor was still living the single life, while my wife and I were focusing on starting a family. We suffered through a few miscarriages, but Sydney finally got pregnant right before I got deployed. It was a rough pregnancy from the start, and Sydney was considered high risk. We were all doing our best to keep Sydney as happy and stress-free as possible. Luckily, Sydney's mom and sister were going to be able to live with her while I was gone, so I knew she was going to be very well taken care of. A few days before I left, Sydney had to be taken to the ER because she was bleeding heavily. I was texting her mother on her phone when Connor texted her. Since you can see previews on the top of the screen, I was able to read enough to see it said something like, "Please keep this between you and I because I know Jared would freak out." So I read the message. It was him confessing his feelings for her and saying that he couldn't go on being friends with her if his romantic feelings weren't reciprocated. I knew that the loss of this friendship would put an incredible amount of guilt and stress on my wife. I was already feeling incredibly anxious about the health of my wife, our child, the fact that I was leaving at such a critical time, and I didn't want another stressor in our life, so I deleted the text. Truthfully, the text didn't even enter my head again for a long time. After a long scare, our baby was fine. My deployment went all right, and my wife gave birth to a beautiful baby boy who I finally met when he was 6 months old. My wife mentioned Connor once or twice in passing, but nothing big. I'm surprised we haven't heard from him. I wonder how he's doing. But last night she was upset and said she thinks Connor hates her because she sent him a few texts over the last few weeks, just saying hi, etc., and he never responded. So I told her about the text. She's kind of angry. She says she understood why I did it, but she wishes I would have let her make her own decision. I just didn't want to put more stress on her, and that day and the days following it were horrible and stressful for both of us because we were so focused on making sure her and the baby pulled through. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole, but only because Connor is a massive a-hole to send such an inappropriate text to a married pregnant woman. You and your wife are both firmly in not a-hole territory, in my opinion. I can understand why you deleted the text and can understand why she's annoyed at you for taking the decision out of her hands. I do think this is a situation where apologizing to keep the peace might be warranted, and showing her a little extra TLC, because wow, this is just one more crappy thing she shouldn't have to deal with at the tail end of an extremely crappy year. But duck Connor. He doesn't deserve to be your friend anymore. Not the a-hole. I'm surprised you didn't text Connor back and tell him you'd intercepted his message and that you didn't need that drama in your marriage. Sure, your wife has a right to be angry, but I would never consider you an a-hole for doing what you did at that moment. The health of your wife and child were in jeopardy at that time. You were protecting them and your marriage. Shame on Connor for pulling that kind of crap on his friends. Not the a-hole. You were definitely in the wrong to keep it from her for that long. I get not wanting to tell her in the moment, but it should have been something you told her not that long after. Then again, new baby brain is a thing, and I think if it was an honest mistake that you forgot to tell her, then you're not an a-hole. But Connor is a huge a-hole for texting a pregnant married woman going through a high-risk pregnancy who is currently in the hospital about his feelings for her. I honestly can't wrap my head around that decision-making process. I have a half-sister, Jenna, who just got her PhD. Jenna doesn't really talk to any of us. She didn't like having a blended family and is super bitter. She clearly looks down on my mom. My grandma is the only person Jenna is still on speaking terms with and likes to rub it in and hurt my dad. She has been asked not to talk about Jenna or bring pictures of her into our house, but recently she came over for dinner and decided to show us pictures from Jenna's graduation party. She pretended that she didn't know we hadn't been invited, which hurt my dad. She then lied about buying Jenna a car, and even my grandfather admitted they didn't buy that car. Jenna's boyfriend did, and he would never spend $100,000 on a car for someone else. My mom and grandma got into a big fight over the car, and my grandma's lying. My grandma was being a witch and saying my mom is jealous because Jenna's boyfriend is richer than my dad. Then I noticed that my grandma still had the pictures of Jenna up on her phone and was angling them towards my dad. I snapped and said she isn't invited to my graduation or the party because she is so cruel and she can't have all of us in her life. It has to be Jenna or us. My grandma called me a jealous little girl and said I was cruel and embarrassing her. My dad is upset and feels I overreacted, but my mom was so happy that she cried with happiness when my grandparents left. I just feel like it's ducked up that she wants to hurt her own son about his estrangement with his kid, and lying about the car is so pathetic. I don't know if she just wanted to bring up what the car cost, or she was implying my dad sucks for not getting Jenna such an expensive gift. Why is Jenna estranged exactly? Maybe your grandmother is angry at your father for not stepping up, moving on to a new family, etc. Just because you know the middle of the story doesn't mean you know the whole story. Whatever the full story is, I'm sorry you have this chasm in your life. I'm sure it is really distressing. Jenna just felt like having a stepmother was awkward and she hated living with us. She said she was only seeing us out of obligation and it was stressing her out and she just wants to be left alone. Not the a-hole. Your grandmother is clearly showing that her loyalty is not to you or your family. She does not deserve the right to harass and belittle you and your parents. You did the right thing. I'm saying not the a-hole. A grandmother should want to be in all of her grandchildren's lives, but to purposely keep her around to mock her own son is intentionally cruel. I'm glad your mother feels like she has someone on her side, and your father needs to get with the program. Jenna has made it clear who she considers family, and as hard as it may be for him, he needs to accept that and put his foot down with his mother. Info. Did your dad make any time for her? Was there any force by either your mom or dad for Jenna to call your mom her mom? What the duck happened to not want any pictures of her in your home? How does Jenna look down on your mom? Sounds like you're more jealous of her than anything else right now. There's a lot of words here, but not a huge amount of info. Yes, he made time for her. No, she was way too old and that would have been weird. It was just more about she just had to be respectful. He has pictures of her, but he doesn't want to see pictures of something like a graduation party he wasn't invited to. It is hurtful to see her celebrating, not including him, and to know his mom was there when she acts how she does. Jenna constantly says my mom is stupid, and it hurts her head to talk to her. She makes fun of her for being basic, putting too much identity into being a mom. She calls her Martha Stewart and a Stepford wife. She calls her a gold digger, but said she was too stupid to get someone richer. She literally made fun of her for doing pageants. But then Jenna's Instagram is nothing but selfies, sexy pictures, posing on her boyfriend's boat. And it pisses me off because how is her brand of shallow so much better than being a pageant girl? So, for some context, I work nights at a fast food restaurant. I work 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. Wednesday to Sunday. The only two people that are working these hours in these days are my manager and myself. This, of course, has made me and my manager grow pretty close. So, a couple of weeks ago, after my manager found out my long-term boyfriend and I broke up, he confessed to me that he had feelings for me. At the time, I was shocked, but honestly flattered. I did find my manager attractive, but I told him it just wasn't the right time because I was just getting out of a serious long-term relationship. It was awkward, but he claimed to understand. The next day, he barely spoke to me. Every day after that was basically the same. Work was so awkward and awful now. He would only speak to me to tell me to do something. After about a week of this, though, it kind of escalated. A customer came back and told me I messed up his change. I realized I had in fact messed up and went to the manager to ask him to open the drawer to correct it. As soon as I told my manager, he began berating me in front of the customer. I tried to apologize, but he told me I was sassing him and threatened to write me up. I was shocked. He had honestly never acted this way. But to be honest, I realized I made a mistake and just dropped it. Until about a few nights ago. One male regular came in. I took his order and no one else was in the store, so we got to chatting. Just normal everyday small talk. After he left, about a few minutes later, my manager proceeds to tell me my constant flirting with male customers was disgusting and needed to stop, or he would write me up. I was in shock and just chose to give him the silent treatment for the rest of our shift. The next day, I called my GM and asked for a shift change. He asked me why, and I told him it was just personal, but he would not drop it. Finally, I just said it was awkward and off with my manager, who had confessed to having feelings for me. He told me if I really wanted to change, I need to file a claim with HR. So I reluctantly called HR and told them what happened. They seemed pretty upset about this and said they would deal with it. I told them I just wanted the shift change, but they just said they would come up with a solution to benefit everyone. So, turns out their solution was to write up my manager for inappropriate behavior with staff, and after he argued hard with this, they made him take a few days of unpaid vacation. Heard this through the grapevine. I told some of my friends, and they told me that I did him dirty. I tried to say I didn't want that to happen, but they told me with today's climate, I should have known HR would overreact and try to cover their butts because an older male manager was making a young female employee uncomfortable. I feel bad he's in this crap, but all I wanted was a shift change. Am I the a-hole for going to HR? Not the a-hole. He was very unprofessional. Whether he expressed his feelings to you at work or elsewhere, he retaliated against you for rejecting him at work. That type of behavior is not allowed in a workplace. You did right. Not the a-hole. HR did not overreact. They acted properly. This is evidently a pattern. You have no idea how many previous complaints they fielded about him, and assuming the facts are as stated, it seems highly likely that the bad relationship would have worsened. He clearly doesn't take rejection well. You did exactly what you should have done. And tell anyone that says you did him dirty to talk to me. I have 20 years consulting experience, and I say you did perfectly right. Not the a-hole. And what the hell is wrong with your friends? You did nothing wrong. He was basically threatening to get you fired by telling you he would write you up for so many weird little things. My husband passed away 4 years ago. Still, our home is just as much his kids, 15 and 17, as it is ours. They still have keys to the house, their own bedrooms, and spend a ton of time over. As they've gotten older and started driving themselves, the communication with their mom has dwindled a bit. I've invited her over, but she said we weren't close before he passed and will not be close now. Blunt but honest, and I respect it. I adore these kids. I've known them since they were 1 and 3 years old. They're family. We hadn't had family photos done since before my husband got sick, so when I was ready to get new ones done, it seemed obvious that they would be in them. Their mom dropped off the youngest a bit before then, and I mentioned I was getting them. I didn't mention specifically that both my kids and her kids would be in them, because I assumed she would assume so. We get the photos done. I ask the photographer to get some shots of just my bonus kids for their mom. We get the photos back, and I get prints for her. I texted asking if she'd like me to drop them off while I was out, or if it'd be better to send them home with the kids. She didn't respond until the next day, and tells me I need to learn boundaries. We talked a bit. It wasn't a fight necessarily, but she said it made her uncomfortable. She said I wouldn't get professional photos of any of my kids' other friends without asking, and that it was weird. I was thrown off because although our kids don't share DNA, they've always called each other brothers. They've been together since they were in diapers. She said she loves that I love them like my own, but they aren't my own, and I overstepped. I feel like I shouldn't have had to ask her. These weren't my boyfriend's kids I saw every other weekend. These are kids that were at our house just as much as their own. If my husband was alive, there would be no question that they would be in the pictures. If they were family then, why not now? I do want to say her and I have never had issues. She isn't just a bitter ex. I think she genuinely is uncomfortable with me not asking. I just also think it's a little ridiculous. Am I the a-hole here? Not the a-hole. I think if they were slightly younger, it might have been polite to just let her know, since she is their guardian, it sounds like. However, 15 and 17 is more than old enough to know whether you want to be in pictures or not. You weren't overstepping her boundaries. She's overstepping her kids' boundaries by trying to dictate who they can and cannot take pictures with. I think this might just be one of those things where, in her eyes, they're little babies that need to be protected. Don't worry about it. You've done nothing wrong. If you want to, I suppose you could always just let her know that they were happy to be in the pictures, and you would have never wanted to hurt them by leaving them out. So you thought it should go without saying that they would be in them. That might calm the mama bear instincts a little. Not the a-hole. This has nothing to do with pictures or boundaries. This has to do with her insecurity. There's another person they love like a mother because she was their second mother for over a decade. She wants to be their one and only. That's understandable, but she can't control who her kids love. Next time, ask the kids if they're okay with pictures, and don't offer the mom anything. In a couple of years, she'll have no say about it anyway. Not the a-hole. She sounds like she's being ridiculous. You've known these children for nearly their entire lives, and have step-parented them for years and years. All you did was just have photos of them and the family done. Not like you pulled them out of their school into a new school, or changed their doctors without permission, etc. You simply got photos, and even thought of the gesture to give her some prints of the photos for free. Sounds more so like she's a bit bitter and jealous that despite your husband's death, the kids still want to come to your house and see you and your children, and she may perhaps feel a bit intimidated by that idea. Because now they don't have their birth dad figure, so it may feel more competitive to be the mom of theirs for her. Some of that jealousy is probably natural instinct, but she definitely needs to find her chill, because you did nothing wrong, nor invasive. They're just photos.